This video covers general servicing of the OBS 18DC orbital sander. Always refer to the machine operator's manual when servicing the machine. Machine operators' manuals can be downloaded from americansanders.com. You can also locate an American Sanders authorized service center nearest you by calling 800-367-3550. Please adhere to this fire safety warning. Dust collected from certain floor coatings can be combustible. To be safe when servicing a sanding machine, always remove and empty the dust bag into an appropriate container. The PowerLab 120 Troubleshooting Tool. Troubleshooting electrical problems on most 120-volt corded power tools can be quick and efficient using the Pioneer Eclipse PowerLab 120. The unit measures line voltage, amperage draw, and includes a 20-amp GFCI outlet and reset button. How to measure amperage draw. Measurement of amperage draw is traditionally done with a clamp-on ammeter. A modified adapter cord is required for this process to access the individual wires in the circuit. To use the PowerLab 120, simply plug the machine or tool you want to test into the unit. Then turn the machine on to immediately see the amperage draw and voltage drop of the machine. This is the first step in troubleshooting operational problems with the machine. Testing the power cord. Plug the machine into the PowerLab 120. A faulty power cord will trip the GFCI breaker when you plug the cord into the PowerLab 120. This gives you immediate results to then move on to repairs or other troubleshooting steps. A high amperage draw can indicate a faulty on-off switch, motor start switch, or a start capacitor. Troubleshooting low voltage conditions. Too low of available voltage will cause an increased amperage draw by the machine, which can trip the machine's 15-amp circuit breaker. Several conditions to cause a low voltage condition include an extra extension cord has been used, a low voltage circuit at the location where the machine is used, or a mechanical issue with the machine. If those conditions do not exist, the machine's circuit breaker could be loose or bad. Replacing the on-off safety switch. Always be sure the machine is unplugged from a power source when working on the machine. Remove 6 Allen head screws. Then remove the front switch cover plate. Then note the location of each of the 4 lead wires and disconnect them from the switch unit. Installing a new switch unit is a reverse process. Connect the 4 lead wires and make sure the wires are not being pinched when you position the switch into the handle. Position the handle cover and reinsert the 6 Allen head screws. Start capacitor testing. Remove the cover of the capacitor box on the side of the motor. Inside the electrical box is the 15-amp circuit breaker, run capacitor, start capacitor, and start switch. These components make up the start circuit. The start capacitor is only used to start the motor spinning. The start switch will then disconnect the start capacitor and current will run through the run capacitor while the machine is running. Run capacitors are always in a metal, oil-filled housing. Start capacitors will have a plastic housing. To test the start capacitor, carefully remove the wire leads without touching the connectors. Start capacitors store a dangerous amount of electricity. Discharge the capacitor immediately using a suitable device such as a small incandescent light bulb with a short lead. If the bulb lights up, there is a charge in the capacitor. Hold the leads on the capacitor until the bulb goes out. Once the bulb goes out, the capacitor is discharged and safe to handle. You can repeat the same discharge process on the run capacitor. Test the capacitors with a meter that measures microfarads. The label on the capacitor will show the range of microfarads for the unit. If the start capacitor is bad, replace it with a new capacitor from American Sanders. If the start capacitor is good, either the start switch or the motor is faulty. Replacing the start switch. Replacement start switches for the OBS 18 come as a kit with a new style start switch along with a new start capacitor that is a microfarads rating matched to the new switch. Installation instructions are included. Disconnect power from the machine and remove the capacitor box cover. Disconnect and remove the start capacitor as described previously. Be sure to discharge the capacitor for safety. Disconnect and remove the motor start switch. The old-style start switch is mounted with 2 screws that also secure the capacitor box to the motor. Then reinstall the capacitor box mounting screws. Remove the number 4 yellow jumper wire between the start switch and start capacitor. Disconnect the number 2 white wire that goes to the wire nut from the run capacitor. Connect this number 2 white wire lead to the new start capacitor. Move the number 2 white jumper wire on the run capacitor to the other side of the run capacitor with the number 4 yellow wire to the motor. Connect one end of one of the previously removed number 4 yellow jumper wires to the start capacitor on the terminal with the white wire. Connect the other end to the open terminal on the run capacitor. Connect one end of the previously removed number 3 orange wire to the open terminal on the new start capacitor. Connect the other end to the number 1 terminal on the new start switch. Connect the black wire from the motor to the number 5 terminal on the new start switch. Connect the number 2 white wire on the run capacitor to the number 2 terminal on the new start switch. Place all the connected components into the capacitor box. Be sure there are no loose or crimped wires and install the capacitor box cover. Testing the machine circuit breaker. The PowerLab 120 is a useful tool to diagnose a machine circuit breaker. Plug the machine into the PowerLab 120 and safely run the machine. With a 125 line voltage, if the machine is drawing less than 15 amps and the breaker trips, that indicates a bad breaker that needs to be replaced. Replacing the vacuum blower housing cover and impeller. Remove the dust bag and the 2 dust collection hoses. Remove the 4 screws holding the blower housing cover to the base. Then lift the blower housing cover off the base. Remove the impeller from the housing base with these steps. Remove the snap ring. Use 2 equal-sized pry bars to lift the impeller of the shaft. Place the pry bars on opposite sides positioned underneath the fin. Remove the 3 nuts attaching the blower housing base. Then remove the lower snap ring and lift the base off the shaft. If any of the 3 studs on the motor cover are damaged, the cover can easily be replaced. To remove the motor cover, remove the 3 Allen head screws and lift it straight up. When replacing the motor cover, be sure to check the smaller impeller for damage. Installing the new blower housing. When installing the motor cover, be sure to align the flat face of the cover to the back of the machine. Reinstall the 3 screws and tighten. Reinstall the housing base by lowering it onto the shaft and secure it with the 3 nuts. The 3 nuts should be snug, do not over-tighten. Reinstall the snap ring on the shaft. Reinstall the impeller. Be sure to put the locating key in the shaft slot. Then reinstall the upper snap ring on the shaft to keep the components secure. Position the new blower housing cover onto the housing base and reinstall the 4 screws securely. Servicing or replacing the pad driver plate and bearings. Remove the blower housing cover to gain access to the impeller blade. Remove the 4 bolts holding the pad drive plate to the base of the machine. Rock the machine back to access the bottom of the pad driver plate. Holding the impeller blade, remove the bolt that holds the pad driver plate to the motor shaft. Then pull the pad driver plate off the shaft with a back and forth motion. Slide the eccentric bearing and locator key off the motor shaft. Check the eccentric bearing for excess play on the shaft and replace if needed. If the isolators are cracked or torn, they should be replaced. The isolators simply unscrew from the pad driver plate. The studs on the isolator are the same on both sides. The side with the washer goes into the machine when installing. Apply 242 Loctite and thread the new isolators onto the pad driver plate. To replace the pad driver plate bearing, first remove the 3 screws that secure the bearing retainer. Using a suitable arbor press, press the bearing from the driver plate, pressing from the bottom of the plate to the top as shown. New bearings are installed in reverse, pressing the new bearing in from the top of the driver plate. Heating the plate around the bearing makes it easier to press in the bearing smoothly. Crooked or incorrect insertion of the bearing will cause failure. Then attach the bearing retainer with the 3 screws to complete the process. To reinstall the pad driver plate, first install the eccentric bearing and locator key onto the motor shaft. Then install the driver plate by aligning the 4 studs in the driver plate into the matching holes on the machine base, while sliding the plate bearing onto the eccentric bearing. You can turn the motor shaft from the top to help the alignment process. Then install the 4 bolts holding the pad driver plate to the machine base. Just snug these to hold the plate in place at this point. Reinstall the washer and bolts securing the pad driver plate to the motor shaft. Be sure to position the alignment hold on the washer with the pin on the eccentric bearing. Then reinstall the red hook pad and stand the machine up. Tighten the 4 bolts to complete the process. Replacing the grip face. When the texture on the driver plate grip face is not securely hold or red pad, replacement is needed. Begin by prying a corner of the grip face away from the driver plate with a putty knife and hammer. Then grab the grip face with pliers to pull it the rest of the way off the driver plate. The driver plate will have adhesive residue from the grip face that must be removed before installing a new grip face. Applying heat is one method to loosen the residue to be scraped off with a blade. A spray-on adhesive remover works well. The bulk of the residue can then be removed with a scraper. Be patient. This process is important and can take some time. The remaining residue can be removed with additional application of the adhesive remover wiped off with a clean rag. Repeat this cleaning process until you cannot feel any remaining adhesive residue on the driver plate. Apply a new grip face by removing the protective sheet from the adhesive side and carefully positioning the grip face on the driver plate. The adhesive is very strong. Careful alignment is important. Apply pressure on all areas of the grip face to secure it in place. Attach the red pad to complete the process. It is recommended to run the machine briefly after servicing to ensure it is operating correctly. For more information, locate an American Sanders Authorized Service Center, or to consult with the American Sander Technical Service Department, call 800-367-3550 or submit a contact form online at americansanders.com.